Welcome to the I Am Radio TV network. Today we are pleased to present a new premiere show, Let's Get Real, with your host, Jeffrey Miller. Now get ready to go. Interactive. Well, hello. How are you? I am Jeffrey Miller. I am the host of the show, Let's Get Real. And what is it about? You say, let's get real. Well, get real, if you remember from days past, meant, hey, let's talk about the truth here, man. Well, lady, let's get real, right? Well, there's so much going on in our world today between health issues, and we just aren't going to have time to get into all those other things that are going on. Well, gosh, we know in this country and around the world, we've got a lot of stuff going on. And it's time to get real, isn't it, when you think about it? That came up a couple of weeks ago. We used to be called Interactive Interviews. It was a division of the network where we interviewed different people. We still do that, and that is why we're here today. But Let's Get Real is talking about it. It's getting to the points. It's talking about the facts. I am very, very pleased to talk about a gentleman today that has become a friend of mine, and I would like to introduce you to in just a few minutes. His name is Mr. Joe Bullock. Joe was born in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, but actually raised and currently lives in Durham, North Carolina. He's 52 years of age. He has been a pre-K teacher for 20 years, currently works at a school. And, I tell you these things because I want you to hear a little bit of the background, a little bit of the history. He's been married to his wife, Michelle, for 27 years. He's a nurse. They have 2 children together. Joe, and this is the heart of the story right now, was diagnosed in May of 2018 with stage 3B colorectal cancer. After routine colonoscopy at the age of 50, he had symptoms for a few months, but like a lot of men, and isn't this the truth, ignored them. Following the death of both his parents in 2017, within 6 months of each other, and that had to be a tough one. I can really relate to that. Wow. During the colonoscopy, his GI doctor found 2 polyps and a 10-centimeter tumor. It was determined that surgery was necessary to remove the tumor, reconnect his colon, and remove 40 lymph nodes, of which 3 actually tested positive for the cancer. After surgery, he underwent treatment with 2 forms of chemotherapy and 8 cycles for 6 months. In February of 2019, he was diagnosed as NED, which is no evidence of disease available to be found. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to welcome you to the Let's Get Real show, Mr. Joe Bullock. Hey, Joe.
Hey, how are you doing today, Jeffrey?
Doing very good, sir. Thank you very much. Your story, you and I talked the other day, and I say the story because it is our story, isn't it? It's the story of our life.
Yeah.
A lot of people just don't understand because I think I'm going to use the word benign, and I actually like that word because
right.
when in cancer, when we find that we are benign, when a polyp's benign or a tumor's benign, thank you God, because that means that there's no cancer there. But a lot of people, as much as there is cancer, and it's pretty prevalent in our civilization and our population, at least I know it is in the U.S.
Right.
It's crazy when you think about it. So when I say most people are benign to it, I think that a lot of people just don't have the sense of what it's like to live through it and to live with it.
Right.
It doesn't hit them until a loved one passes from it, or they know somebody in their family or very close to them that is suffering with it and from it.
Well, I think
go ahead.
I think unfortunately with COVID-19, I think they've learned what that's like, which is the sad thing. Because I know a lot of when COVID-19 came on, they came to a lot of the cancer institutes, the cancer researchers, and because we as cancer patients understood what isolation, is and was. We understood what it's like to be sick and to deal with all those things that now people are having to deal with, the idea of wearing a mask and being alone and being in isolation. And Exactly.
Well, that's getting into a lot of other. Oh my gosh,
Other
I've heard
things,
some.
but yeah,
I mean, it's a big ball of wax, as
yeah,
we used to
yeah,
say.
exactly.
It's a conglomerate
Hmm.
of just
Hmm.
some horror stories that I've heard from people from young to old, from
Hmm.
mothers having children, from children being sick with disease and having to go into a hospital, to older folks that just, that all their faculties aren't there. They've been married to
Right,
someone for 70 years, and the next
right.
thing you know, they're not with them anymore, and they're a little bit of Alzheimer's dementia, and they just don't
Hmm.
understand, and
Yeah,
they're being isolated because
exactly.
potentially they wound up with COVID.
Hmm.
That in itself is oh my gosh, I think we could talk
Hmm.
about it for a long time. I
We
don't know if we'll
could,
come up with
we
all the
could.
answers.
No, no,
Um,
we won't. But
it is. Let's see. Hey, that's Tracy Morgan saying hi
yeah,
to you, brother.
Tracy. Hey, Tracy.
So
I was just speaking to
thank you,
Tracy last
Tracy.
night. So,
Tracy's a great guy. He's very
yeah,
loyal to the network. He
he
and I
is.
did a show a couple of weeks ago
Hmm.
about our situation with cancer. And
Yeah.
folks, just so you understand, when I say I understand what Joe's going through and our stories have a similarity, I am also a cancer survivor. Mine was not colorectal; it is in fact prostate. I am still alive with the cancer, living with it since July 2017. I did a special little show after leaving my oncologist yesterday. I said, you know what? This pride thing's got to go right out the tubes. It's
Hmm.
gone.
Yeah.
Um, and that's something we're going to talk about today, Joe, that you and I both recognize and realize. We know a lot of people that a lot of men, and I'm talking men,
Hmm.
that
Hmm.
seem to want to just kind of put the blinders on and say, I got to deal with this myself.
Right.
I don't want to open up to this. I don't want to talk about this so much.
Right.
It's very discerning because
Hmm.
I can appreciate what they're going through, as can you.
Right.
We
Right.
both been
Right.
there.
Right.
uh,
Right. Right.
it's not fun. It's not
Yeah.
fun at all.
Yeah.
The amazing thing is, and how we met is because of a group that you brought together. And before we talk about that, I want to go over a couple of things and bring about some history and some backstory with you.
Okay.
Well, like I said, we've got a lot of similarities, but
Hmm.
you know, cancer has always been a very ugly word to me, and I think as long as I can remember, I said I don't want to get cancer because it meant dying.
Hmm.
It was synonymous with the word dying. It is still for a lot of people. Oh my gosh, I have cancer. I mean, I noticed this thing floating around on Facebook just today, and they put it up like they have a best friend and they went to the doctors with them and they were diagnosed with terminal cancer, and
Hmm.
would you please share this on your page for somebody that's going through this? I appreciate all that, but
Hmm.
man, Joe, you and I and a lot of men we know, and a lot of
Hmm.
ladies out there too, actually are that person that's being spoken about.
Right. Right.
And I have a problem with that one. I hope somebody
Hmm.
wants to correct me on that. They certainly
Hmm.
can. I got big shoulders. I will be corrected. I can't stand to be corrected. There's another meaning to it. I just didn't.
Right.
I know it's about awareness. I know it's about awareness,
Right.
and
Right.
and the word cancer came into your life as well as it did mine. So when did you first really hear about this word cancer? When did it come up in your life?
Well, it's interesting. And actually, when I was 25, because I was born with one testicle, and I honestly just felt as a young child and young adult that was just not that I was just born that way. That there was nothing to be concerned about. I was told by other doctors. I didn't have very many physicals growing up. I wasn't a very sick child. So it wasn't until I was 25 that I was actually, it's interesting, I was actually earning some money because I was getting ready to get married. I was 10 days from my
Right,
wedding, and I was actually cleaning a doctor's house to earn extra money. And he had mentioned to me one day, he said, when's the last time you had a physical? He was kind of a young doctor. He was in his early 30s. And I told him, well, it's been a while. And he said, why don't you come to my office? Let's just get you a physical. Let's make sure you're ready for your marriage. You're healthy. And at that point, I was a pretty healthy guy. I mean, I had been working out, and I was 25. I was young. I was probably like most young men who really wasn't that concerned about their health. And I went to his office. We did some blood tests, did the physical, we did the whole hernia check, and he noticed that I only had one testicle. And he asked me about it. He says, "Anybody ever said anything to you about that?" And I was like, "No." And he goes, "Well, I'm a bit concerned because you do have it. It's called undescended, and I'm concerned that you could have cancer, testicular
Wow.
cancer." And and at the time, he was like, "You probably don't. You could probably leave the office today and never get cancer. But if I were you, I would pursue this." And so he's like, "Go get married, but when you get back from your honeymoon, I want you in my office. We need to do an MRI. We need to have a surgery, remove the testicle. We need to make sure that there's no cancer, that if there is cancer, that it hasn't spread." And luckily, everything was negative, and there was no cancer found. And the ironic thing was, he said to me that day, he said, "And hopefully this will be the only time you'll ever hear the word cancer in your life."
Mm.
Well, unfortunately, it wasn't.
Right.
And so when when I built my home that we've lived in here for 20 years, we built it across the street from my dad. And once again, I was probably in my mid-30s, and I hadn't really been to the doctor recently. We just had our first child. So my wife was like, "Honey, you go get a physical." And so I was looking, we had moved to a new area, so I was of Durham. So I was looking for a doctor. And I happened to go, I didn't realize at the time, but I had gone to the same doctor my dad had. And I got in his office, and he looks at my family history, and he goes, "Aren't you Don Bullock's son?" And I was like, "Yeah, that's my dad." "And you're Myra Bullock's son?" I was like, "Yeah, that's my mom." And he goes, "Well, I'm a bit concerned because I believe your dad is showing early onset signs of prostate cancer.
Mm.
And I believe that you need to get your prostate checked today. You need to get checked again at 5 years, again at 45, and after 45, I believe you need to have yearly checks because I'm concerned that this is going to run in your family."
Right.
So, but I've never, once again, my PSAs have always been low. I've never no prostate cancer, but I still get it checked because it runs the family history.
Yes.
Really.
Good thing.
So when the whole idea of colon cancer came about, even the idea when I started showing symptoms for it, after my mom and dad had passed away, I played it off basically as that it was stress. It was related to the stress of their deaths. It was related to mourning their deaths. It was just a stress of finalizing their arrangements. So, I Googled, of course, Dr. Google, it talked about hemorrhoids. So I pretty
Yep.
much put it off. I put it off to the side. It wasn't until so my dad passed away June 20th of 2017. My mom passed away in November
Mm.
2017. So I had made an appointment in October because I was showing those signs, those symptoms, and I had planned a colonoscopy. It was supposed to be the Wednesday before Thanksgiving because I thought, well, that'll be convenient. I'll do the colonoscopy on Wednesday. My wife, we were just going to put off Thanksgiving until Friday, and that way I could recover and we could have Thanksgiving on Friday. Well,
Right.
my mom passed away 2 days before that planned colonoscopy.
Oh my gosh.
So once again, I kind of stuffed my feelings, stuffed my emotions, put off the symptoms. I didn't want to deal with it because I had enough emotionally dealing with at the time. And so it wasn't until probably February of 2018 that one day I was having in the bathroom and I had a bowel movement and there was blood in the water. And
Oh wow.
I knew at that point I've got to get this done. I've got to get a colonoscopy. And so I called and rescheduled, and which they were surprised I hadn't rescheduled it. And I once again though I did it out of convenience because I'm a teacher, and my year
Mm-hmm.
for teaching was going to end about mid-May that year of 2018. So I said, well, I'll kind of plan for it, and I ended up doing the colonoscopy. I think it was around May 19th of 2018. Went in for the colonoscopy, and I had Googled enough to know what I was looking at during the colonoscopy.
Okay.
You do the prep, and you lay down on the table, and and they get the scope, and they give you that twilight medicine, that twilight drug that kind of puts you to sleep.
Yes.
So I drifted off of sleep for about 10 minutes into it, and I woke up, and I almost kind of felt like I was in a dream state. So I was looking at the monitor, and in my mind, I thought I was at home looking at my computer. And then all of a sudden, I realized where I was, and I looked up, and I looked at the screen, and I remember telling the doctor, sorry, I'm a little emotional. Um, you know, is that me?
Yeah.
And what I'm sorry.
No. Don't be sorry. Don't be sorry. This is a place we can let it out. All right.
Get real.
Yeah.
So what I saw was basically a meatball hanging off the side of my colon. And the doctor was wonderful. It was Dr. David K. Woods at Duke University, GI doctor, Duke University Hospital, the GI clinic.
Mm-hmm.
And he said to me, he said, okay. And he knew, he could look at me, he saw tears, sorry, going down my eyes. And he said, we got to the other side of it. We've got up into your colon. Everything looks great. We removed the 2 polyps. We're going to mark your tumor. We're going to measure it. But I want you to know one thing. He said to me, we've got you. He didn't say
Wow.
I had cancer. He didn't say that I had stage 3 cancer. His first words to me, "We've got you."
We got you.
And so he said, "I just want you to take some deep breaths. We're going to get you cleaned up. We're going to get you in the room. We're going to talk more in a few minutes." So it was about a half hour or so. Got back in the room, and he comes in the room, and once again he says to me, "What did I say to you? What did I say to you when we were in there?" And I said, "You've got me." He said,
Yeah.
"So remember that. That's all I want you to focus on right now from this day forward. That's all I want you to focus on." And he had already set up my oncologist. He had already set up my surgeon, made the appointment for both. Um, and he actually called me like the afternoon after my surgeon's appointment to make sure I understood what was going on. He wanted to
Mm.
make sure I knew the process. I knew what the surgeon was going to do. I knew what was going to happen afterwards. To make sure I had talked to my oncologist, and he had actually been
Right.
talking to the oncologist also. So Duke is at Duke University Hospital, and they work in a team. So it was just very for me. It just made me feel very secure in my diagnosis. At that point, it
Mm.
did. So so where was that? So after that, and my wife, who is an RN at Duke University Hospital, so I was very well taken care of. As far as I know, a lot of cancer patients, they have to research a lot, or they have to figure out what's going on, what's the what, you know, what oncologist they have to go with. And because my wife was a nurse at the hospital and her boss, they had already figured out who my oncologist was, who the surgeon was. It was sort of like showing up for my wedding. I mean, there wasn't much I had to do. Which was good for me, you would think, as a cancer patient, to have that kind of support. But honestly, after a couple of months, I became very robotic. Um, I was just doing what I needed to do to be a good patient,
I hear you.
which I think is very common for men. I think that's why we do go into our self-isolation. I think we want to follow
Without
the
a doubt.
rules. We don't want to be rule breakers. We want to follow the rules. We want to do what we're supposed to do. That's what we're taught. And so it wasn't probably until a couple of months that um, a lot of the emotions started to kind of take place, for me. And so when that started happening, um, was probably into my second, because I did basically what I had to do after surgery. They removed the tumor, because they removed 40 lymph nodes during surgery. 3 of those
That's
lymph
quite a
nodes.
few. That's quite a few.
He
I
was
had
my
I
surgeon
had
was
3. I only
my
had 3. Yeah.
my surgeon. He was looking for a path. He said he was trying to find a
Yeah.
path,
Okay.
and so he removed 40. He said three out of those 40 did have cancer. So he wanted me to pursue 6 months of oxyplatin
Mm-hmm.
infusions and Zanola pills. Um, so basically, I would do an infusion, and then after the infusion day, I would do 14 days of Zanola pills, and then I would have 6 days off. So it was like a 21-day cycle for 6 months. And so, and gosh darn it, the 6 days, those 6 days was like a vacation from chemo.
I can imagine.
I would end it feeling like crap.
Yeah. Oh,
On the
yeah.
21st, you know, but then, and I would feel like a 10 the day going into another chemo infusion. You know, and I had we call it neuropathy. I
Mm-hmm.
had all of that in my throat from the infusion, in my feet, in my legs. At one point, I actually thought I had a blood clot in my leg, but it was a reaction to the chemo that I was having.
Oh, wow.
It seemed like every cycle there was something different.
Well, there is, and I can attest to
Yeah.
that for sure.
You know, I remember one cycle, I had gotten done with chemo. I think it was like, I'll jump back in a minute, but it was like the 4th cycle. And I remember I walked out of the infusion, walked down the hall. I was going to the bathroom, and I was in the bathroom, and all of a sudden I couldn't catch my breath. It's like somebody was squeezing my neck.
Wow.
And I remember I got out in the hallway, someone got me, and they sat me down, and they stayed with me for a few minutes, and they called somebody over and they checked me out. But it was just, I was having this once again. It was just some crazy reaction to the oxyplatin. I never had that again. It was just at one time. In fact, I never told my wife about that.
She knows now.
She knows now, but I never told her about that.
I should be laughing.
Yeah,
Should be laughing.
she'll be laughing, but I never told her about that one. You
A
know,
lot of
and
things probably we have kept to ourselves. I'm probably, a
exactly,
lot of aches and pains, a lot of reactions.
exactly. You give them enough to
I
worry about.
I was with I was with my oncologist yesterday, going over a new pathway, let's say, of what's next for me, and my wife couldn't be there. I had to actually dial in on the phone to her. Dial in. I think I'm calling into a radio station. I had to call her on the phone and ask the doctor's permission and say, I'd like to have my wife on the phone while you are conversing with me. And
Right.
that way she will, because as well as I do, we can have a state of emotion about this.
Yeah.
And you could go to the doctor yourself and come home, and you're wrapped up in it on the drive home. And you may not remember every word that you need to say to relay. Which is why they like to be there. Yours in particular, no doubt, and mine too. Mine is my caregiver, my best friend. Yours is as well, but she's also your nurse.
And I was fortunate to have, talking about caregivers, honestly, I was very, very blessed. I had, and I start tearing up again. My wife, who's like, oh goodness, the main character. And then, of course, my daughter, my younger sister, who it was really hard to tell her about my cancer because of my parents both had died just recently.
Yeah,
And so
I
it was
agree.
hard
I
to tell
understand
her
that.
there was an idea that something could happen to me. I also, I am a pre-K teacher. I've been one for 20 years, and I teach at a school. I teach at Waypoint Preschool in Durham, North Carolina, and there's a group of I'm the only male teacher at that school, and sorry. There are 12 women in that group that are just, they were angels.
Makes a huge difference, doesn't it?
It does. And honestly, they really loved me through my cancer. Sorry. So they loved me through my cancer. And when you talk about caregivers, I had a cousin who lives next door to me, Roy Meacham, who just, he asked me how I was doing, of course, but he just one day showed up and started mowing my grass. It wasn't, I ever asked him to do it.
That's the beautiful stuff right there.
I never asked him to do it. He just kind of waved at me and said, I got it. I got it. And he mowed it for several months while I was in treatment. And it was such a burden lifted off my family. That's one of the things I forgot. I mean, I have a teenage son, but I had forgotten to show him how to mow the grass, and it was just one of those things that I didn't get around to, because when the chemo happened, it came on, when cancer happened, it came on so fast.
Wow.
But yeah, talking about those caregivers, they really come to your life in so many places.
They should do.
You don't realize,
they should do. Absolutely. Absolutely. We,
Was
as you know, in our discussion the other day, and with other men and women that you would speak with, the impact that cancer has on your life is huge.
Mhm.
I
Definitely.
I don't know. Every one of us is unique in our journey, but
Right.
each of us collectively, as a group, go through similarities. Where people say, "Well, how did it change your life?" I think you're speaking to that right now, but talk just for a minute if you would. And by the way, ladies and gentlemen, thank you. I see we've got quite a few people with us. Just a few more minutes. We're going to be asking you to post in the chat questions you may have, or if you want to say, "Hey, here you go, Joe," whatever it is. Okay, please do so. We're going to have another solid half an hour of show. And please, this is the interactive media network, and we're all about being interactive. Okay, if we want to hear from you. Okay, send your love, send your share, send your care, and please share this out. This is critically important, and I use critically because it is so important that we get the word of awareness out. So if a man like Joe or like myself, because I put mine off too, I didn't think I did, but I did. If a man is out there right now going through some phases and symptoms, and he sees this and hears this, he's going to go, "Oh, I better do something. I better do something," because it's going to be the difference between life and death. It really is. And it doesn't mean that it isn't already too late. And we all pray it's not. So, Joe, talk about impact for a minute. Think of some of the things that have, the cancer has impacted you, and highlight a few things. I mean, I know the change has been dramatic of the way I wanted life to be.
I think before cancer, obviously I'm a father. I have two children, and a lot of our life, my son's a teenager. At the time, he was just entering high school. My daughter was going through first year in college. Our life was sort of like a freight train. We were going pretty fast. My kids were pretty independent. They were making their decisions. I had been a stay-at-home dad for 20 years and a part-time pre-K teacher. And I was realizing at that point, before cancer, my role was kind of changing. Not that I wasn't needed as a dad. I'm always needed as a dad, but they weren't needing me as much. So I saw that me starting to lose some of that identity. A lot of my, honestly, a lot of my male friends were because of my kids. My daughter played in marching band, so a lot of the friendships I had were around her other dads that were in the marching band, or my son, his involvements at school, and so I was friends with those dads. So a lot of my identity and a lot of my friendships were coming from those areas, and as I think for most men who have kids.
Right.
And like I said, I work with a group of women, and so was the only male teacher. So as far as there were a few friends, it had a church, so there are definitely some men there who work at the church that I had gotten friendships with. But so a lot of those relationships were there. So when cancer came about, those things changed very quickly. Part of it was I wasn't a guy who sought relationships. Honestly, they usually came to me again with kids and wherever my life was at. After getting cancer and seeking out support in different online groups like you have done, one thing I noticed is they were predominantly women, which
Yeah, it's
women
true.
are. I mean, they've led the way in this. They're social creatures, and they've led the way and created these foundations, these groups. And the one thing I noticed that there was a lack of men in the group. And so as I was looking for support, I would at times friend request. A lot of us on Facebook. So I would, as I saw another man who's going through it, I would just friend request him. And that didn't happen early on. I have to go back. It was probably about when I was diagnosed in July of 2018. We're talking like almost September, October of 2018.
Right.
Because I did find myself going through an unhappy phase, and I don't know what it was in myself. I was able to catch myself. I did seek some therapy. I had to step back for a minute. I was actually in my oncologist's office one day, And the oncology nurse noticed that there's something wrong with you. She's like, you are not the same. This is probably into my third chemo treatment.
Wow.
She was like, you look really sad, and that is not you. I've known you for 5 months at that point. And this is not the Joe that I know. There's something going on with you. And I didn't see it. I didn't see that I was depressed because I was never really a depressed person. Even though I had been through that past few months of my parents dying and going through
Right. Oh, yeah, that had to be a
the
tough
grief
one.
of them,
Yeah.
I don't think it really hit me what that had done and then what the cancer was doing. And so it was like this freight train that was ready to crash. And I think it had crashed that week. And the oncology nurse had caught it. And she's, the oncologist came in, he noticed it. He's like, while you got a minute, I'm going to bring the therapist in and we're just going to talk for a minute. That's all we're going to do. And we did talk for a minute and it was helpful. And we did a couple of more sessions and it was helpful. And I actually joined a local support group, which is very helpful. But then again, even in that support group, it was mainly women. There were men in the group, but a lot of the men, you could tell they felt kind of forced to be there. Like the one that I went to happened to have a support group for the cancer patient, but they had a separate support group for the caregiver at Duke.
Yes.
And you could tell.
Yeah, I understand why too. Yeah.
Right. Because the caregivers need support also. But you could tell the men that were in that group, and I honestly was there, not reluctantly, but in fact, it was funny. I went there because a friend, Aaron Duffy Woody, who is is also at Duke, had sent me a private message that day and asked me, "Are you going to go to support group?" And honestly, I had been avoiding going to the support group. I had known about it, but it happened to be next door to the hospice center that my dad had died in.
Oh, goodness.
So
Oh, wow.
I just wasn't ready to see those doors again.
I can understand that.
But because Aaron had reached out to me and my wife had said, "Are you going to go to your support group that day?" And I was like, "Well, Aaron just sent me a message," and I said, "Yes." So a man of my word, I have to go.
Wow.
And so, I went to that support group that night and cried my eyes out and did all the things you do. But then as I was in that group, I noticed when the men were coming, a lot of times you either had the man who had the list ready to share, or you had the men that were just, and it was sort of like me, was kind of reluctant to share.
Yeah.
The therapist would kind of go around and say, "Do you want to share? How about you share?"
Yeah.
We're good with that.
Yeah, the share part's hard, and that brings me to a really good point. And I'm going to pick up on it in about 30 seconds, ladies and gentlemen. We got to go to what we used to call station identification. And we'll be right back with you in 30 seconds. Get yourself a glass of water, cook some popcorn, and be back with Joe and I for at least another half an hour after this message. Thanks so very much. Hold on.
Thank you for being here with us at the I Am Radio TV network. Have you ever thought about sharing your message to the world? Or perhaps you'd like to talk with us about being a guest on one of our many upcoming shows. Either way, reach out and contact us at the I Am Radio TV network at gmail.com. We look forward to hearing from you. And now, back to the show. Get ready to go. Interactive.
Okay, and we're back on air. That was just a brief message, and it pretty much says what it says. If anybody has that special message like we're talking about today that would like to speak to me about being a guest on this show, Let's Get Real, please do. Please reach out. It gave you all the information. You can find us on Facebook and go to our YouTube channel. And by the way, speaking of YouTube, that is huge for us right now. We need to grow that YouTube channel to get more awareness out about these type of shows and what's happening. And it's called awareness. Okay. We are talking about Let's Get Real, but it's all about awareness. So that's what it comes up to. Joe, we talked the other day and we mentioned your cancer voice. And I know I had to come up with the same thing. I feel as time moves forward, we have that, but I also fell back into a little bit of a pit where I'm going on 3 years now. They're still calling this stage 4 cancer. My counts are down to 6.78 right at the moment. It's only double digits and above that they concern themselves. I was 957 metastasized to my liver and my colon. I was given a death sentence of 6 months to a year.
Right.
And they weren't kidding. And I went through some stuff. You know yourself. We all uniquely handle this stuff differently.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
I'm not quite sure what it was, whether it was my upbringing from my mother and father. It could have been a lot to do with when I get out of regular business, I decided, what do I want to do with myself now that I'm kind of retired from the business world as an entrepreneur after 40 years? And I said, I know I love helping people. I love that. Let me do some psychology courses. And I wound up being a coach with Tony Robbins style and strategic intervention, NLP, which is neuro-linguistic programming, which has to do with flipping the switch with thoughts and emotions that stir around up here. And also hypnotherapy, because I could use hypnotherapy online with a patient to help them understand they can get out of that state. They can flip that switch and change their attitude about whether they're going to react to what's happening to them or are they going to respond to it. And, you know, I had to become my first best client all over again because I had to retrain me to try to keep that upper chin, which doesn't mean don't cry. Big boys are supposed to cry. And I've got some big friends in Hollywood that'll tell you that. And one of them's name is Mr. Glenn Moschauer. And if anybody remembers 24, the series 24, he was Aaron Pierce. If anybody remembers Transformers, he was the general. Recently, talking about in the South, he's on The Resident. He's the dad in the show The Resident, which is based on a hospital out of Atlanta. And he's had 45 years of Hollywood, over 250 films. And he's a real guy just like us. And that's why I love that man. And he will tell you, big boys are supposed to cry.
Right.
It's one of the things that's bred into us. And I think it's bred. I mean, it's like this is the way it is. Children are supposed to be seen and not heard. And young men especially. So why do they think we don't have that voice? There's a big part of the why. So when you developed your cancer voice, and you call it that, I know you're eager to speak on that, and I'm going to let you get right to it. Here's an interesting thing. I came across a book, and I think I mentioned it to you, written by the gentleman by the name of John Piper. He's very well known in the Christian circuit. I shouldn't call it the circuit, but book writing, and it says, "Don't waste your cancer." What do you mean, don't waste my cancer? What does that even mean? Because it makes me want to read it, and I did. Well, let's talk about your voice. I want to hear it when you developed your voice, your cancer voice.
Well, it definitely developing because I don't know that I'm there yet. It's taken some time. I know after I got that NED, that cancer-free diagnosis, and it took a while, honestly. I know when, back in February 2019, when I got that word, a lot of people around me had said, "Oh, you need to have a party. You need to celebrate this." And I honestly didn't feel like doing that. I didn't. I remember the day, and some oncology centers, when you do your last chemo, you get to ring a bell. Just happened to be at Duke Cancer Center, they don't have that. And I remember the last day of my last cancer infusion. I just kind of walked out of the door with relief that it was over. And then when, a month later, when I had the scans and actually found out that I was NED, and I walked out that day, it wasn't a party time for me. It was, I remember I got into the hallway and I had to sit down. I had to catch my breath. And luckily there was a bench there, and I sat, and, I called my wife, and she said, "How did it go?" And I told her, "I'm cancer free." And she said, "You're feeling better now, aren't you?" And I said, "Yeah, it's gone." And then, and I called a couple of people and told them the same thing, and then, and we did go out, that night, and there's a place called Big Ass Burgers in town, and
I
I
like
did go
that.
out and I bought the biggest, bacon cheeseburger they
That's
had,
right.
and I celebrated.
Celebrate with it.
But but I didn't have this idea of this big celebration, and it took a while to even want to talk about cancer after that point. I
Mm.
kind of wanted to shove it away. I really stopped being online as much. I just didn't want to think about it anymore. It wasn't that I wasn't happy. I was very happy. I was very happy. I was happy to somewhat start to feel normal again and
I
to
know what
put
you
it
mean.
behind me. But slowly, things happened. I had a really great friend named Brent Call, who is in Clemson, South Carolina, who is in our Man of Cancer group. And he would keep contacting me off and on, and we talk, and he was getting seen at Duke University Hospital also. And so, I would say, okay, well, maybe I'll come see you. Maybe we can visit together while you're getting treatment. And it put me, and I understood what it was like to be a caregiver because I had been that for my mom and dad.
There you go.
Um,
Right.
so, so I decided, okay, well, yeah, I'll come sit with you. We'll talk, and we had those times together. And I started to realize that I found this place because I think when you go through cancer, you kind of lose that identity. You really come out of it not
Yes.
really knowing who you are. You've survived
That's true.
cancer,
Very true.
but
Very true.
but, but where do you go from there?
Mm.
What do you do now? And that's what I had to spend a few months trying to figure out. And I think I prayed a lot about it. I think certain doors opened and certain doors closed for reasons, I believe. I
Amen
remember
to that.
I would go to see Brent at the hospital, and a couple other friends that I had gotten to know. I would go visit with them. I would learn that they didn't need me to fix anything. They didn't need me to try to explain their cancer. They just needed me to be in the moment, and I learned that. And I think I had learned that from my mom and dad going through what they were going through, also. And then probably about December of 2019, my great friend Trevor Maxwell, who's up in Maine, had contacted me, and he was asking me, he was telling me about something he wanted to do, and it was man up to cancer, meaning man up, not what we think of man up as far as we're taught as men, to deal with pain, to put some dirt on it, walk in pain, when we're
That's right.
athletic, or we're playing on a team and we're hurt, we're taught to go play hurt, so and so looking at man up in a different perspective. And and I had been a part of Colon Town, which is another colon cancer support group.
Right.
And there was a group in there known as the Men's Poker Group. And it was just a men's only support group within that, a virtual support group. And he was in that group. So he reached out to me and he told me what he was wanting to pursue was to create something for men going through all forms of cancer, which attracted me because early on we talked about I had with testicular cancer and prostate cancer. So that lured me in. Basically, it was kind of like, yeah, that's something I've been thinking in my head. I just didn't know how to put those pieces together. And Trevor, with what he was creating, was kind of putting those pieces together. So he had asked me if I would like to come on and help him with the Facebook component of the group, which is going to be the private men's Facebook group,
Right.
the Howling Place. We call it, we lovingly call it a Wolfpack. We have that kind of team spirit, that pack spirit. It's what men yearn for. We yearn for that whole team atmosphere. We played sports growing up. We loved being coached. So all those ideas, Trevor was creating with this group. And so I came on as a lead administrator for that Facebook group. And as I said earlier, over the few months I had cancer, I had actually friend requested a lot of men who were going through cancer. Predominantly, at the time, it was men who were going through colorectal cancer at the time. But I had also reached out to men who were going through testicular cancer, prostate cancer, brain cancer, lung cancer, and slowly kind of just reaching out to men and what they were going through. So when in January 1st of 2020, a few months ago, Trevor said, I want to green light this group, support group, called the Howling Place, which is a component of what he was creating, which is manuptocancer.com in the support group. And so I just initially invited those. There was around, I think I had about 300 men, and within that week, I just invited those 300 men.
Wow.
Not knowing that this would even be something that men would pursue. Men typically aren't on Facebook. Men typically expect their wives to find their support. Men typically,
that is true. That is true.
And men really don't
with exceptions, of course, but they're mostly true. Yes.
With exceptions, but men generally look to their wives, their partners, to find the answers for them, and some of it is because they are going through an incredible amount, and sometimes emotionally they just aren't ready to pursue it themselves. They need that help.
That is true. You got it.
Nothing wrong with that at all.
Yes.
But so going back, so then I invited these 250, 300 men, and I think within the first week, 200 of those men had already joined the group.
That's fantastic.
I think really kind of blew. I think Trevor was expecting maybe 25 to join, and so it was pretty. I think within the. And I remember Trevor was doing Lee Silverstein, who is in our group, has a podcast called We Have Cancer, and Trevor was going to do that podcast, and in my mind, I really wanted Trevor to have at least 300 men in the group, so when he went, he could say, I had 300 men in the group, and I think we actually reached that by February 1st. So it was pretty incredible, and it's a great group of men, and it's just not men that have cancer. I was
going to ask you. There's also men that are caregivers, right?
They're men that are caregivers. We have some really awesome men that are caregivers in our group. One of these, I had the privilege, and I can say, take advantage of this. I had the privilege in January of working with a young man who's 12 years old, Jay Noakes, so sorry, who is going through stage 4 colon cancer. He lives in California, and he and his grandmother, Jane Benson, who is his caregiver. Mm-hmm. Larry Benson is actually in our Wolfpack. They were coming from California to North Carolina for Jaden to have a life-saving surgery with Dr. Hayes Jordan at UNC Children's Hospital. Mm-hmm. And since they were coming here, I offered to kind of be their gopher in North Carolina, pick them up at the airport. We did a card drive, a greeting card drive, an encouragement card drive. I think he got probably close to 1,000 cards.
Fantastic.
And he's doing very well now. In fact, he sent me, there's a bracelet. I don't know if you see this bracelet.
Oh, isn't that nice?
But the neat thing about it is there's bumps on the bracelet, and it actually reads Wolfpack.
Oh, wow.
In Morse code. So that was really great.
Oh, fantastic.
Not that recently. But his grandfather's in our group. He's a caregiver. And so we're offering that support because men who are caregivers also go through really the same emotions. We know this. They go through the same emotions we go through.
Oh, and sometimes, Joe, I think they go through more.
They go through more, because they're trying to figure out our diagnosis. They're trying to support us through the chemo.
Yes.
My incredible wife, I had to get shots because they were concerned that I could have blood clotting after my surgery. Oh, yeah. She had to give me. They tried to show me how to do the shot in the hospital, and
you're not going to get me to do it either.
No, I got it. I'm a nurse.
No.
So, and luckily,
behind my back, I don't want anything to do with it.
I know there are people that do that to themselves.
Yeah.
But
I'm a big boy, but I ain't doing that.
My wife took care of me on that one. I couldn't have done it either. Yeah. So we have caregivers in the group, and is one of our caregivers, Larry Vincent, who is an incredible.
That's fantastic. So, what would you think the ratio are of caregivers to cancer patients?
In the group, it's a small amount. I'm sure it's probably around 5 or 10%.
My hats off to each. I mean, my hats off to every one of y'all that's going to hear this, that's live with us now, that hears it in replay. And please, if you're here with us live, give us a hi. Ask questions, please. We've got about 10 minutes or so left of showtime. Joe would love to answer your questions. I'll answer questions. You know, I'm well, as they say, still calling me stage 4 prostate. I don't have the metastasization anymore, but that's another story. And this is not for me to talk about at the moment, but that I relate. My wife is my caregiver. She has been up and down like a yo-yo with this emotionally. She deserves a really good vacation. She really does. So, which brings me up to something I want to talk about for a minute, Joe. Okay. If you have a list of, okay, I'm going to throw this out to you. This is something I'd like to do. I am blessed to be part of a business. I am still an entrepreneur. I still have my multi-stream businesses, right. and I don't know how many are bringing any money in right now because, you know, COVID-19 kind of put the squash on incomes, right, other than necessary jobs. But a lot of people with any extra funds they may want to spend, you know, to take a holiday or something like that, go on a trip. Just we weren't able to do it. My wife and I actually own a travel agency, and we're putting it to bed, to be quite honest with you, because it just, the length of time it's going to take to get it out and get it working again, it would be over a year. I love it because we love to travel. Now that we're back into broadcasting and I brought the network back from what it was radio to now TV, this is it. This is it. I'll go on a vacation. We're going to have a hard time not doing a show. I'll be honest with you. Once it gets in your blood. But here's what I'd like to do. And this is very dear and dear to my heart. I have the ability to gift 4-day, 3-night vacation stays at luxury resorts. What I'd like from you is people you feel that could use that. Okay. And you talk to them about it. And I'll give you the information to talk to them about it, to know what's expected of them. These are not timeshare presentation things. These are real, beautiful resorts that they can get away to. Right. They've got to get there, and they'll be responsible for the room tax and the resort fee. None of them are more than $30 a night. So once we can start becoming a traveling civilization again, and these certificates will be good for up to 2 years. I'd like to gift that to these people. Behalf of my wife and I, we have a nonprofit called Gift What You Need, and that's where it's going to come from.
Awesome.
It's very emotional to me because there are so many people, you know, you see so many people that do things for people. You know, you've got different shows. You've got Oprah, you've got Ellen, you've got these different shows, and they do things for people that are really special. You know, us ladies and guys that have the cancer, God bless us. I mean, we go through a lot. We're the physical end of this thing. Our caregivers don't know what to think sometimes.
Right.
They can't feel the pain, but they can see it. They can see when you're not walking straight and you look like you're going to walk into the wall because you're dizzy. I had a shot I had another shot yesterday. It's knocked me for a loop. I'll be very honest with you. I was up and down 7 times last night. In the first 2 to 3 days, I get them every 3 months now.
Okay.
And I'm going to have to get them for a while until we get these counts under control. And I'm going to be starting a new medication. And I don't know what that's going to be because the last one's side effects were dramatic. I mean, dramatic. And almost to the point where I said, who am I? And I wasn't asking God, but I was asking me, what's my name? I mean, it's ridiculous because you almost start losing your mind. So this is very near and dear to my heart, caregivers. So if you would think about those that really could use and deserve this, and we'd like to offer that on behalf of the network, and Gift What You Need. And anybody that wants to check it out, Gift What You Need is on Facebook. It is going to become a 501c3 nonprofit, and it's going to seek funds to help people in this way, to get them a trip, get them away, and also to support other nonprofits that are helping survivors in many different things to do with disease of what we go through as humans. So that's my little take on that, and it's wow, it's a journey, isn't it?
It is. I know one thing I'm looking for. I'm actually going to be and starting this month as an ambassador for Fight CRC.
Oh, fantastic!
And one thing I'm looking forward to doing for them is actually, you're talking about, you know, learning your cancer voice, is spending the next few months actually doing that with them. They support as ambassadors. They do actually teach us how to create that voice and how to use it.
Excellent.
And I'm looking forward to that and just getting some training in that area. And it will, at the end, hopefully next March of 2021, they do what's called Call on Congress. And all the ambassadors will go to Washington, D.C. and call on Congress, basically our
Right.
legislators, to pass amendments and to get funds for research. Back in 2018, when I was diagnosed, the age 50 was the age for colonoscopy.
Yes.
Because of groups like Fight CRC, they went to Congress and they asked and they pleaded to reduce
Get
that age.
Good.
And to go to the insurance companies and the
Yes.
drug companies, and they got it reduced to 45.
Well, I was going to say, I believe that zero end prostate cancer. I'm hoping that they did the same thing. I think they got it down too.
They do a similar thing too.
Yeah.
And because my oncologist and my surgeon had both told me that if I had gotten a colonoscopy at 45, I probably would have only had stage 1 cancer.
I know that story.
I probably would have had stage 1 cancer, and I would.
Yeah.
It would just been simply removing some polyps, and then I would have to go a year later again, which I did. I did get I had another colonoscopy last summer, and
Right.
it was clear. It was clear,
Good.
so I'm clear for
Good.
3 more years. But but it was because at the time, and I had, I think years prior to that, I would have these stomach issues, but I never really thought to pursue anything with it. And I don't know if that made any impact at all, but I thinking that I could, if it had been reduced to 45, even back in 2017, 2016, would have been the possibility that I had gotten a colonoscopy. I would
it's
not have ended up with cancer.
that's a tough one when you talk about
one.
insurance companies. And they're not my favorite people.
Right. Yeah.
Woo!
And that's why groups like, Prostate Zero and groups like Fight CRC are so important because they do go to legislature.
Yes, they do. They kick them in the
they-
butt.
and to be a part of that, to be an ambassador and to learn from that, I think is going to enhance my own voice, which I'm looking forward to doing.
Yeah, we've got. I see we've got a comment in. Let's see. Oh, how true, Tracy, our good buddy Tracy. If we only knew then what we know now.
Yeah, exactly.
How true is that, Tracy?
That's very true.
Tracy is a huge ambassador and advocate for zero end prostate cancer. He and my buddy Pat Scheffler, they were on the show with me like 2 weeks ago, I guess it was now, and we had a good chat about all that. And they both are raising quite a bit of money, and also as ambassadors, heading to DC to help in that same endeavor. Lobbying is not an easy thing, and historically, a lot of people don't like lobbyists. It's the ones that are the insurance companies, the tobacco industry, and all those seem to get the biggest voice. They seem to get the ear because they have the biggest pocketbooks. They have the lining. Yeah, Tracy said wouldn't be stage 4 now. Amen, brother. Neither would it be for me. Neither would it be for me. He and I are going through that. We're still going through it, and we're there. We're in it.
And I think, doing something like what I'm doing with the ambassador, it's not for everybody. I mean, you can use your voice and it can be used in many ways. I mean, I think for men, I think that's why the 5Ks are so popular and the races are so popular.
Right.
Because that is a way to use your voice. It's a way to use your abilities. It's a way to raise funds and for women also. So and actually doing, and honestly, I've only been cancer free for 16 months now, so I'm really young. Is in doing advocacy work, and I know many men like yourself and others who have been doing it for quite a few years. And I remember when I was just starting to do this, I felt, I was like concerned that my voice wasn't enough. And I remember a friend of mine sent me a message and said that it doesn't matter. Just use your voice. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter when you start. It doesn't matter when you finish, but just use your voice.
You're right. absolutely correct. And I had this conversation with a good friend this morning on a call, and sometimes for some reason we think we need to be silent. And I think it also lends itself right back to that we were taught. There was quite a few generations that taught children should be heard and not speak. In other words, be seen and do not speak, however that went. And I try not to remember it. That's why I'm not saying it correctly. Children should be seen. And yeah. Anyway, the bottom line is this: we a lot of us grew up that way. Right. And as adults, no matter what's going on in our life, we act that way. You know, we say, well, I think I'll keep my mouth shut. I don't think I'll say anything. I don't know if I have to say anything would make any difference. One of the great things I think about your age is this. As an advocate and an ambassador, they're going to look at you as a younger man than they'll look at me. I hit the grand old age of 68 on the 2nd, just a couple of days ago. Right. And, you know, they go, well, it's about right for you. Well, what do you mean it's about right for me? Why is it right for me? Well, because it's an old man's disease. Cancer, prostate cancer is just one of those things that happens to men. It just happens. Well, it doesn't have to just happen.
They said that about colon cancer.
They did. Oh, yeah. And now, you know, colon cancer was the one. Yeah.
I mean, you see these men who are in their, you know, their late. Well, I know a good friend of mine, you know, a guy online, Steven Estrada, who was 28, diagnosed with stage 4 colon cancer.
Yeah, you just don't know.
These guys that are athletic who,
right,
you know, really weren't, you know, thought they were healthy, weren't concerned about their health, and all of a sudden they just have a stomach ache, and they go to a doctor and get a checkup and get a scan, and boom, they walk out with stage 4 colon cancer at 32. Or
exactly,
you know, Trevor Maxwell, my friend with Man Up to Cancer, you know, he was, I think, 38 when he was diagnosed.
Wow.
With
you know, yeah, I'm looking forward to connecting with Trevor. We'll have to have a call one of these days.
You know, but yeah, for him, and he has a young marriage. He has 2 young teenage girls, and I mean, they were living in the prime of their life, and to be side blocked by this. And that's there. And there are other men. I could really go through our members and men in our group, and there are a lot of young men that have been. Stephen Huff with the Huff Project, another man who was a baseball player, who was sidelined in his 30s with stage 4 lung cancer. So I mean, it's just
you never know, and you know, we could have
none of this is an old man's disease. Old man's disease. It's not.
I tell you what,
I think that's something we have to get rid of.
You're going to see as time goes by here. Now we're putting together quite a lineup of shows. Last week I interviewed Dr. Amy, she's a renowned physical therapist, but she'd say, well, physical therapist, what's she going to do for us? Well, she has developed a technique that has to do with breathing and calming the stresses in the body. And I can't even explain how it happens, but it is real. And I've had a couple of sessions with her when I was going through this last thing of finding out that my PSA was high again. I didn't even realize the stresses were pouring on. I mean, I was acting like a you know what. I mean, you know, I was edgy, I was moody, I was like, you know, it wasn't always me, but I thought I was going the other direction. I thought finally we got over the hump, you know. Yeah. So we're also going to have people on the show. We're going to have people that talk about nutrition. And one of the things about nutrition that's so huge is that we don't really have a good nutritional value in our diets anymore. And they're telling us now that a lot of the childhood cancers, the leukemias and all that are pretty well geared to cells that are reacting in a way that they would never react in until the body's older, but because of the contaminants, because of the additives, because of the growth hormones, and also the junk that they're putting in food and milk these days. Yeah. So if you know, even it's never too late to start. I can't wait to get one of our new. In fact, my wife has a sister-in-law that's a nutritionist in the UK. I would love to. I've had her on a show a couple of years ago. I'd love to get her back on. She has, oh my gosh, she has an amazing way that she does this, because hasn't been doing everything but except on Zoom these days, because that's what people had to do. UK or here doesn't make any difference. But we're going to get into all this stuff and what the health stuff is, what we need to do for exercise. I've got a lady that's a wonderful lady from LA is going to come on the show that does the exercise part of it and why we need to do it. I mean, and it's just so much. There's so much that we need to do.
Well, and it's interesting you say that, because one thing about our group is, early on, there were a lot of men who, like me, who were stage 3, or they were stage 2 or stage 1, who would come in the group. They would be in the group for a while, and then they would all of a sudden realize they really didn't feel like they had much to offer, because for them, and I felt a little way this me myself, is you kind of felt like it was kind of like a one and done thing.
Yes.
And I remember there's a guy in our group. He's one of our admin, Clint Hartwell. And he had sent me a message probably about 2 or 3 months ago and said he didn't really feel tied into the group. And we started talking more and more, messaging back and forth. And he started talking about he was getting his license in oncology massage therapist, as an oncology massage therapist. And as we were talking, I was like, you're talking about voice. I was like, there's your voice. That's what men need to know, why that's important, why that kind of oncology massage therapy is important. You're talking about your body. Well, how can that help your body? How can that help having a massage? How can that get you through chemo?
Very true. Very true.
And so a lot of these guys, like, that have these early stages, and for some men, honestly, when you do, if you have that kind of one and done thing, sometimes it's best to walk away mentally. And I understand that also. I totally understand that too. Not that you wouldn't help out, not that you might not do a 5K.
No, that's true.
Might not fundraiser, but to be in it on a daily basis or to lead a group might be really hard for you to do. Also, but so in that, learning what you can do, and for Clint, it was like, that there's your talent. You could definitely support the group in a great way, also. So I
that's
think
fantastic. Fantastic. Well, we could probably, I know we could go on and on and on and on. So here's what I propose. We're about 8 minutes past the hour, but that's okay. I'm glad we had this time, Joe. It's been a pleasure having you on the show, and I thank you so very much. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to throw this out there. I'm going to get a hold of Tracy, brother, if you're still with us, myself, potentially Trevor, and let's do a roundtable. Let's do a roundtable discussion about this. All right. Let's bring up some more awareness.
It might be great, because I know this month is June is National Men's Health Month.
Okay.
So that might be a good.
Let's do something around that then. Let's organize that behind the scenes, and we'll advertise it and get it out there so people know it's happening. And friends, thanks so much for being on with us today. We appreciate you. On behalf of the I Am Radio TV network, I Am TV, which is going to be our new logo for our new channel coming up, which is going to be amazing. You'll be able to sit on the couch, click the TV on, go to the Roku channel, and watch I Am TV and watch these shows live and also in rerun. I never thought I'd ever say reruns. I never liked reruns, but the other day I got to lay down on the couch and I watched The Rifleman. And I went, are you kidding me? Season 1 in black and white. And I said, it didn't make any difference to me. It was in black and white. It was still as good now as it was then. So anyway, TV is TV, and it should be that, right? It should be that. So we are about awareness. We're about getting the message out. There's a lot of other great shows coming up. Tuesday, we have check our lineup on our Facebook page. Please love us by liking and sharing to your page and going to our Facebook page and liking that page so that you'll make sure you get notified of when these fantastic shows are coming up. And I do call them fantastic. I have to feel that way. I'll be honest with you, because this is stuff that we need to hear. This is awareness. This is let's get real, because we have to, ladies and gentlemen. So thanks for being with me. Joe, thanks for being a fantastic guest with us today. And we will definitely have another show. Folks, get ready for that, because we'll be advertising that before you know it. Joe, stay with me right there. I'm going to end broadcast and wish everybody well. Oh, wait a minute. Before I do, I got to click in here. Tracy is here. Here we got there we go. Thank you, brother Tracy. Appreciate you. And on behalf of the network again, I am Jeffrey Miller, and my special guest today was Joe Bullock. Reach out to Joe. And just going to quickly bring that back up before we press that button. I want to get that up to you guys. Here it is right there. Go to Facebook, Man Up Cancer-the Howling Place. Reach out and tell them Joe sent you.
That's right.
They'll appreciate it. All right. Stay right there with me, Tracy. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks again. We're going to end broadcast at this time. Take care until the next show. I am Jeffrey Miller, IMT.